Welcome to the NHL Wraparound podcast featuring Neil Smith, President General Manager of the 1994 Stanley Cup champion New York Rangers, and longtime ESPN NHL veteran Vic Morren. Together, they share no-nonsense opinions on news and issues around the National Hockey League. Whether you're a casual or diehard fan, each episode of NHL Wraparound will leave you more informed. Now, here's your hosts, Neil and Vic.
Welcome to NHL Wraparound Summer Coolers, presented by UBS Financial Services, Inc. Vic Morren, Neil Smith, and today we will tackle what I regard as maybe the most intriguing of the four divisions, the Atlantic. The Metro already out, and before we get into the Atlantic Division, Neil, you've got some news on a couple of guests that we'll be featuring in early September.
Yeah, it's exciting to have Spencer Carberry from the Washington Capitals is going to be on our show, talking obviously about the Capitals and the many improvements they made over the summer. And then Stanley Cup champion Rod Brindamore will be on our show to talk about the Carolina Hurricanes and their hopes to repeat and get the second Stanley Cup in as many years. Just all the more reason why you need to subscribe and make sure you don't miss these episodes, because those will be good ones with those two current coaches and guys that we expect to have good seasons this year. And it's going to be a lot of fun. So subscribe early and make sure that you're there so that you get a reminder that the episode is out.
I'm excited about today's episode because the Atlantic Division has several powerhouses and a couple of teams that were powerhouses that fell back badly last year for differing reasons. And so I think when we go through these teams, there is no shortage of intrigue with any of the 8 clubs.
Absolutely right. And we're going to get to that, and you'll see that. And when you look at the standings from last season, the final standings of the Atlantic Division, you almost think you're looking at them upside down. Like, am I looking at these right? The Maple Leafs at the very bottom and the Buffalo Sabres at the very top? Or is this a preseason standings? I mean, what is this that I'm looking at? But no, what you're looking at is you're looking at the final standings from the 25-26 season. So let's get into them.
The way we do this is, as Neil had just said, we're going to go from 1 to 8 based on the standings from a season ago. We'll give you some basic stat info and then talk about the adds, the drops, the movement, and just some of the questions that we have as we head into the 26-27 season. So we start off. The Buffalo Sabres, first in the Atlantic last season, second in the East, only to the Hurricanes, 4th overall. They end a 14-season playoff drought, qualifying for the first time since 2011. They defeated the Boston Bruins in 6 games before falling in overtime in Game 7 to the Montreal Canadiens. But the metrics, offense up, defense up, power play up, penalty killing up. Everything pointing in the right direction as Lindy Ruff enters his 3rd season in his 2nd stint with the Sabres. But with that, Neil, now that this playoff drought is over, brand new set of expectations.
Oh, absolutely. Those Buffalo fans are going to expect to be in the playoffs again this coming season, 26-27. They're going to expect to have a good season. They're going to expect to be one of the top teams. But when we get through their adds and their drops, let's see if we feel that by the end of this segment.
The most significant move was seeing unrestricted free agent Alex Tuch on a sign and trade sent to Washington for David Kampf and a 2026 third-round pick. But I do believe they strengthened their defense. They moved Bowen Byram, defenseman, who was looking for first pair time, and Jordan Greenway to the Chicago Blackhawks for Louis Crevier. the first and second round picks in 2026. So I thought that Crevier was a very serviceable defenseman on a not very strong Blackhawks team. And they also pick up Olin Zellweger from the Anaheim Ducks, who signs as an RFA with the Sabres. So I think when you look at the collective here and you take a look at the emergence that we saw last season of Zach Benson, particularly in the playoffs, I think more is expected out of Peyton Krebs. I like the direction this team is headed, and even with the loss of Tuck, I think this team can still have a 100-point season.
Yeah, I mean, Tuck is a big loss for them, no doubt, but Tuck also might have had a career year last year. We'll find out when he now plays for Washington and see what he can do with them. But Bowen Byram gone to Chicago. I don't see him being what he thinks he is and what he hopes he's going to be and what Chicago hopes he's going to be, and the massive contract they gave him after they gave up a couple of very valuable picks to get him from Buffalo. So I do agree with you that I think Buffalo is going to be right there in the mix at the top of the Atlantic Division. They'll be battling for that. They still have Tage Thompson and their other real good players. So this is a team that's going to still have to be reckoned with.
I still like this defense now that it has been a little bit revamped, with Rasmus Dahlin really emerging during the postseason as a clearly elite backliner in this league, in addition to Owen Power. But one of the moves that they did make in terms of dropping players was goaltender Devin Levi being traded to Edmonton for a third-round pick in 2028. So now this leaves the threesome of Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, Colton Ellis, and Alex Lyon. And while I think their goaltending was good enough to get them through the regular season and have the year that they did, I'm not certain that this is championship level net minding just yet.
Well, I don't think it's Stanley Cup goaltending at all, but I don't think that the Buffalo Sabres are a Stanley Cup contender at this point. I think that they're a contender to do damage in the Atlantic Division, but I don't put them in the elite teams quite yet.
A couple of other players I just want to mention that are no longer with the team this year. Michael Kesselring, defenseman, traded to San Jose, and Luke Shen, who was acquired from Winnipeg around the deadline, along with Logan Stanley, who, by the way, is still unsigned. He was signed as a RFA by the Vancouver Canucks. So certainly a little bit more streamlined on the back line. But still, I like this team going forward. And also, I think we're going to expect a little bit of contribution from forwards Konsta Helenius and Noah Ostlund, who we saw towards the latter part of the season and into the playoffs. And I think if they could step up their contributions in the new season, it will more than make up for the loss of Alex Tuck.
Yeah, I mean, it's really hard to say. I wouldn't go as far as to say that they can make up for Alex Tuck or that all these can. I mean, Tuck is a guy who played in all different situations. And I guess to fill in for him, they're going to have to do it by committee, meaning that there'll be several players that are going to have to up their game so that you don't notice the loss of Tuck. But make no mistake about it, Tuck was a very, very important player to them during the regular season. And we'll see what Lindy Ruff can do with this group to fill that in.
Do you think for Jarmo Kekalainen, Tuck's struggles in the playoffs, which were very, very noticeable, despite the number of chances that he got, probably made him maybe a little bit less attractive for the Sabres to try to re-sign him, even though he is from that area?
Yeah, he's from the Rochester, Syracuse area in Western New York there, and grew up a Sabres fan. But I think that the money was just astronomical for the Buffalo Sabres to be able to pay to Alex Tuck and for the amount of time. And You might be right, Vic. He did not have a good playoff, and that might have soured management a little bit, especially when Washington's going to give him, $84 million in 8 years. I don't think that the Sabres are ready to start paying that kind of money.
We'll move on to the Tampa Bay Lightning. Head coach John Cooper starting his 15th season with the club. Finally got the long overdue, I think in some people's opinion, Jack Adams Trophy, as Coach of the Year. But perhaps the biggest news that they made was signing and then trading defenseman Darren Radish, who had a career year on the back line and was really a savior for the team with the amount of injuries that defense had last year. He was sent to the Maple Leafs after he was signed for 8 years and $8.5 million, sent to the Leafs for a 2026 fifth-round pick. And also Nick Paul, who was probably one of the most serviceable middle six forwards in the NHL, was also moved to the Leafs for Dennis Hildeby, a 2027 fourth-round pick, and a third-round pick in 2028. So certainly a very different look for this team on their back line. They did sign John Carlson as a free agent after Carlson was traded from Anaheim to Carolina. So one of the things I'm looking at here, this back line for 26-27 is really getting long in the tooth. Victor Hedman is 35, and you remember that he was out due to some personal issues he was dealing with. He did not play a game after March 10th. Carlson, 36, and Ryan McDonough, 37.
Yeah, no, it's an older defense for sure, but real good quality, obviously. Hedman seems to be, all reports are that he's back, he's healthy, he's mentally ready and sharp and able to go, so the captain is back. I think they're going to miss Nick Paul, and they obviously are going to miss the Darren Radish that they had last season. I mean, that was his breakout season, the best season by far that he's had as far as an offensive, just a howitzer of a shot from the point by Radish. He takes that to Toronto. And you're right, the McDonough, Carlson, and Hedman, you've got a lot of age there, so they're going to have to start to fill their closet with some up-and-comers because they're not going to have those three for very much longer.
Do you feel that the urgency level with this franchise is a little bit heightened here? They're the seventh oldest team in the NHL. Nikita Kucherov, 33. Jake Gensel, who I remember just coming up as a rookie. He's already 31. Braden Point is 30. And Brandon Hagel, 27. So you're starting to get a little bit old up front as well. And, of course, you've got Andrei Vasilevsky, even though goaltenders are a totally different animal when it comes to the age line.
Let's not forget, though, that Vasilevsky's hips are not the greatest. He's had some hip issues, which is common in goaltenders, the way that they have to go down and spread across the goal line, particularly now they're always in a butterfly. So Vasilevsky, although goaltenders are a different animal, and they do usually play a bit longer, i.e. Bobrovsky, now in Toronto, was the Florida two-time Stanley Cup champ. He's playing late into his 30s. They're going to have to keep an eye on Vasilevsky and his health because that has been a hindrance to him, to one of the very top goalies of this era.
As mentioned, Dennis Hildeby comes in from the Maple Leafs in that Nick Paul deal, and Matt Sogard signed as a UFA from the Ottawa Senators. They also added for a little bit of offensive pop Ilya Mikheyev from the Chicago Blackhawks and a couple of free agents. From the bottom six from the Anaheim Ducks, Jeffrey Viel, who played very well in the playoffs last year. Jansen Harkins also got some playing time in there. And to round out the toughness, Scott Sabrin comes in, re-signs with the Lightning, 1 year, $850,000. And you have to think that that's a little bit of piss and vinegar for the matchups that they're going to be anticipating with the Florida Panthers, who we're going to talk about shortly.
Yeah, and Jeffrey Viel was a real good find by Pat Verbeek in Anaheim last year, so I would expect that he'll do good things for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Sabrin is a guy that they know. He's one of their own, tough customer. But yeah, they know they've got to get a bit more grit to deal with their friends in the same state.
Their notable drops, in addition to those we've already mentioned, Corey Perry goes back to Los Angeles for the second time, and Oliver Bjorkstrand signed as a UFA by the New York Rangers as well. Mitchell Chaffee signs as a UFA by the New York Islanders, and Declan Carlisle signs with the Pittsburgh Penguins. A couple of prospects to look at for this season. Sam O'Reilly, who was acquired in the Isaac Howard trade last year. Perhaps he gets a little bit of playing time this year. Also look at Dylan Duke and Ethan Gauthier. Gauthier, the second-round pick in 2023. But before we leave the Lightning, and I want to come back now to where we started with this Radish sign and trade. Why would Julien Brisebois just not elect to hold on to Radish, because he's 6 years younger than John Carlson, and they signed for the same amount of money, $8.5 million. Radish's contract 8 years and Carlson's for 2.
Well, probably because Darren Radish has only done it once. John Carlson's done it for a decade. And so you're more sure of those 2 years with Carlson than you would be on 8 years with Radish. I think that that's a real reach for Toronto and Chaika by signing Radish to an 8-year deal when he's only had this one $8 million year. I'll put it to you that way. He's never been a bad player. It's not like he wasn't any good. It's just that to earn that $8.5 million for 8 years, he had an outstanding season last year. But perhaps being on site and watching him, Julien Brisebois felt that he just couldn't go that far. And so therefore he had to get what he could get, which was only a 5th-round pick. And off Darren Radish goes to Toronto.
The Montreal Canadiens, Martin St. Louis, starting his 6th season with the Bleu Blanc et Rouge. They finished 3rd in the Atlantic last year, 4th in the East, 6th overall. And they made the conference final by defeating the Lightning in 7 in a game that they had no business winning with, I don't know, was it 7 or 9 shots on goal? And then they beat the Buffalo Sabres in overtime in Game 7, as we mentioned earlier, before falling to the Carolina Hurricanes in 5 after winning that first game. Offense, 7th in the league. The defense came up from tied for 22nd to tied for 16th. Power play tied for 10th. Their penalty killing dropped a little bit, but I think one of the most intriguing things with this club is that there are some alarm bells that are going off in Montreal that the Canadiens have not been aggressive enough during the course of this offseason. GM Ken Hughes and, of course, working alongside of Jeff Gorton, their only trade acquisition was Brett Berard from the New York Rangers for William Trudeau, a defenseman that has never played in the NHL. So it's almost apparent that the Hughes-Gorton tandem are looking to continue to ride this youth movement to take them to the next step.
Oh, absolutely. And they've done some really smart things in their signings that they did earlier, got some people locked down into longer-term deals early before the astronomical numbers started. And so I think they're taking it slow. They're not in a rush to get to the promised land. They want to just continue to keep building.
Their RFA re-signs, probably the most interesting aspect here. Ivan Demidov, 8 years, $9.15 million. That kicks in next season. And Jakub Dobiš, who clearly established himself as the number one goaltender. Remember Sam Montembeault, who was the rage when they made the playoffs in 2025? He's still under contract for another year, but he's not even on the landscape. Dobiš signing 3 years, $5.358 million. That kicks in next season. They also held on to Kirby Dach, who's had a kind of a hot-cold relationship with the Canadian fans. $3.6 million for 1 year, avoiding arbitration. So, as we said, it looks like they're trying to ride these players because their UFA signings were really nothing of note. Kaapo Kähkönen, a goalie, re-signed with the Canadiens. He was actually under contract with them, but he last played with Colorado in 2024. And Samuel Poulin, 1 year, $850,000 after not receiving a qualifying offer from Pittsburgh. So you can see the thread that we are weaving here, that this is a team that is just going to continue to stick to their guns.
For sure, and I'm sure they're getting the backing of ownership on that. When Jeff Molson is very supportive of the management team that he's got there. And the drops, it's the first year that for in a long time that we'll see our familiar number 11, Brendan Gallagher, not playing for the Montreal Canadiens. He's moved west and gone to the Vancouver Canucks. That'll be a little bit different. A feisty guy for a long time, a fan favorite of the Habs fans in Montreal.
Also, Joshua Roy traded to the Utah Mammoth, and Joe Veleno and Sammy Blais signing with the Rangers and Ottawa Senators, respectively. Top prospects to look for: Jacob Fowler, who came up later in the season, did impress. Looks like he'll be the backup for Dobish. Also, Michael Hage, first-round pick in 2024, although he does plan to return to Michigan for his junior year, so perhaps he gets some playing time with the Canadiens after the college season ends. And David Reinbacher, the 5th overall pick in 2023, perhaps he can add to a defense which right now features the likes of Lane Hudson and Noah Dobson.
That's right, and we can't forget to mention that Patrick Laine, the Rage, when they got him, is a unrestricted free agent, and obviously the Montreal Canadiens are not going to re-sign him, so we'll see where he lands. It's late in August as we speak, and Patrick Laine still sits on the sidelines.
So when he got off to that really good start 2 years ago, who was the one on this program that said, don't be fooled by this fast start? He's going to come to earth quickly.
That was you.
It wasn't me. It was you. It was you. You know, you saw that coming. So as you just said, Laine is still out there, and we'll see where he lands, if anywhere. The Boston Bruins. Marco Sturm will be starting his second season behind the Bruins bench. 100-point season for the Bees, finishing 4th in the Atlantic. They were back in the playoffs after missing for the first time since 2016. They did lose in that opening round to the Sabres in 6 games. Offense was up. Defense was up. Power play was up. So those 3 areas looking good for the Bruins, but their penalty killing was 24th. And normally that would not send off too many alarm bells, except that they were shorthanded 278 times, and that was more than anybody in the NHL. And that was a problem that just seemed to manifest itself, that discipline, over the course of the entire season.
Yeah, it did, and their discipline to stay out of the penalty box has to be held in check going forward. They did have a tough time in that regard, and then when you're taking that many penalties and your penalty killing is 24th in the league, that means there's pucks going in your net.
One of the things that we pointed out in the Atlantic show was the Pittsburgh Penguins having a lot of guys that had very strong years, and some rather unexpectedly. And this was comparable to the Washington Capitals that we'd mentioned in 24-25. Do you see the Bruins heading down a similar path here? Because I remember a year ago, we said, it's David Pastrnak, it's Morgan Geekie, and it's a bunch of other guys. Yeah. And the other guys did extremely well last year. Pavel Zacha, 30 goals, 65 points. Victor Arvidsson, 25 goals, but he signed as a UFA with the Detroit Red Wings, so he won't be back. Casey Middlestat, 15 goals. Rookie Fraser Minton, 17 goals. Marat Hustadinov, 15 goals. And Mark Kastelik, a tough guy, had 12 goals. So you see a lot of these numbers here from last year, and they're going to have to be maintained, if not exceeded, and I'm not sure they're capable of that. The one guy that I think has to step up, former 40-goal scorer, Lindholm, only 17 goals last season. So when you see these two goal scorers in Pasternak and Geekie, it's a big drop-off to the rest of these guys. So where do you see this landing with these clubs? Are they going to fall back as we think the Penguins might and as the Capitals did last year?
And I really do think so. I just don't think that Boston has enough. I think they had a terrific season last year under Marco Sturm. They exceeded everybody's expectations, but they had career years. I mean, Geekie just had a crazy good year, you know.
And he had two sustained goal droughts of like double digits in terms of not scoring goals.
Yeah, so he was hot and cold all season, but a lot of hot that went into helping David Pasternak with putting pucks into the net. So I'm looking, to be honest with you, I'm looking to see if Boston can stay in the playoff mix. I just don't know that they've got enough. And they did get JJ Peterka from Utah. Hoping that they can pull out of him, I guess, what the Buffalo Sabres saw when he was a few years ago when he was with Buffalo. But he certainly didn't have a great year with Utah. And you always get worried when I see a player move to another team in a big deal, and then that team quickly, like within a year, sheds him from their team. I start to worry about that player. Is he really what he was supposed to be in the beginning, or has Utah caught on that, we better cut cord on this guy pretty quickly, and that's what they did.
Well, that's the point that I wanted to bring up about Peterka is this is a guy that I think when you look at him, you're expecting 35 or 40 goals. This is his third team in 3 seasons. And as you just said, Utah cut bait pretty quickly, and it almost followed the same path as what the Sabres saw when they moved him to the Mammoth.
Yeah, and that there was a little bit of a ice time contract type of thing going on there with Peterka and the Sabres. But Utah was quick to say, yeah, we'll take on that potential. And now Utah's quickly said, hey, Boston, do you want that potential? Because now Peterka's going to be in Boston now. So we'll see what he can do for them. Will he get it on track, or will he continue what he's been for the last few years?
A couple of other acquisitions via the trade route for the Bruins. Will Borgen, defenseman acquired from the Rangers for 2 draft picks and one of our favorite names in the NHL, Ivan, coming in from the Colorado Avalanche. But in terms of their drops, Jonas Korpisalo, who is back up to Jeremy Swayman, was traded to the Rangers for a prospect and a 4th-round pick, so they signed Yuri Patera for 1 year at $850,000. He played 1 game for the Canucks last year. So a little bit thin in terms of goaltending should Swayman go down.
And yes, or Swayman just hit a major cold streak. I thought Jonas Korpisalo was really good for them last year when he came in and played. But he's now with the Rangers, and he'll back up Igor Shesterkin.
Couple of other UFA signees for the Bruins. Connor Clifton comes over from the Pittsburgh Penguins. Jordan Harris is actually re-signed by the Bruins for 1 year at $850,000. In terms of the prospects, we talk about what we're looking for from JJ Peterka. How about James Higgins, the 7th overall pick in 2025 out of Boston College? Can he contribute this season? Also forwards Dean Letourneau and Will Zellers looking to potentially crack the lineup. So I think there are a lot of ifs here when you sum this up with the Bruins. I think there is potential. I think you need guys that had good years last year to continue an upward trajectory, but I don't think that there's a lot of margin for error when you sum the Bruins up.
No, there's not, and there's going to have to be some get above our expectations, play above expectation for this club to have a good year next year. I think that they can't just, they've got to exceed expectations, each and every guy. And I'm not sure, I agree with you, Vic, that can they all have another good career year? I'm not sure you can do that 2 years in a row. We saw it with Washington, as you pointed out.
That wraps up 1 through 4 in the Atlantic from 25-26. And a reminder that you are tuning in to the NHL Wraparound Summer Coolers, brought to you by UBS Financial Services, Inc. We move forward with the Ottawa Senators. Finished 44-27-11 last season, 99 points. They were 5th in the Atlantic, qualifying as a wild card, and they were swept by the Carolina Hurricanes in the opening round. They were 6th in the East. But what I think a lot of people miss here, this club was 9th overall in the NHL. However, their landscape has changed drastically with the trade of their captain, Brady Tkachuk, going down to join his brother Matt in Florida. He was moved on June 21st for 4 draft picks. So I think in past years, Tkachuk had somewhat been looked at as excellent player, heart and soul kind of guy, somewhat of a distraction with his temper on occasion, and there was questions whether or not he was the right captain at that time for the team. But with him moved, can they adequately supplement his departure in order to maintain competitiveness for a playoff berth when we get to next spring?
Well, I think, Vic, that you're going to see a different personality to this Ottawa Senators team. I think that the Tkachuk brothers, Matthew in Florida and Brady when he was in Ottawa the last close to a decade, their personality is infectious, and the team ends up playing a lot the way that their captain played, the Brady Tkachuk. Now he's gone. They're going to have to find a whole new leadership for that team. How are they going to play? What will they be known as? And so I think that they're going to have to find that, and that's not going to be easy for them. I think Travis Green, the head coach, is going to have a tough job now. That's a big loss for him in the locker room.
In terms of scoring pop, they did acquire William Eklund June 23rd from the San Jose Sharks and Andrei Burakovsky from the Chicago Blackhawks, who I just feel that we're always looking for some sort of contribution that is always more than what he actually puts up. But speaking to the new leadership group, this team is now that of Tim Stützle, Drake Batherson, and Jake Sanderson as the new big three.
No, absolutely. And they are a formidable big three for the Ottawa Senators, no doubt about it. They've also, in talking about the leadership part of this too, don't forget that Claude Giroux has come back again, the former captain of the Philadelphia Flyers, and we know that he's been very good for Ottawa. He's from Ottawa. He wants to be in Ottawa, and all that is really good. So he will still be there to help guide and mentor this young group.
One of the areas that I'm really looking at here is their goaltending, because their goals against average was 13th in the league, but the save percentage, 29th. Linus Ullmark struggled early in the season, took some time off midway through the year, was a little bit better towards the end of the season. They've acquired Sam Ersson from the Toronto Maple Leafs, who was originally acquired by the Leafs from the Philadelphia Flyers, as backup, and they also re-signed Levi Merilainen. So I think if this team's going to compete, the goaltending has got to be better than it was a year ago.
Well, Linus Ullmark has to get back to where he was when he played for the Boston Bruins. I mean, he's just got to get his game back under him. We haven't seen him play like he did for the Bruins since getting to Ottawa. So they definitely are going to have to lean on him, and he's going to have to come through for them. It's an interesting stat. 29th in save percentage means that you weren't allowing a lot of shots, but a lot were going in. So they will have to clean that up.
Just rounding out some of the transactional stuff with the Senators, they signed Phil Tomasino as an unrestricted free agent. He was traded from Pittsburgh to Philadelphia on New Year's Eve last year, but never played for the Flyers. And also Sammy Blais comes in on a 2-year deal from the Montreal Canadiens. And their drops, Nick Jensen, defenseman, signed as a UFA by the Anaheim Ducks. Dennis Gilbert signed as a UFA by the Buffalo Sabres. Lars Eller, up front, signed as a UFA by the Florida Panthers. And as we had said earlier, Matt Sogard signed by the Tampa Bay Lightning. But I think a guy that they are looking towards to really add some pop to the defense, and that is Carter Yakimchuk, who's the 7th overall pick in 2024. He had 2 assists in his only playoff appearance last year, and I believe he got hurt. But this is a player that they are looking towards as part of their future.
Oh, absolutely. And as you said, he only played in the one playoff game, but he did very well for himself. And I know that they're looking for him to be a important part of their D going forward.
A couple of other players to potentially look for downwind. Defenseman Logan Hensler, who was their first-round pick in 2025, University of Wisconsin, and Kasper Holttunen, who was acquired in the trade along with William Eklund. Big shot, and perhaps can step into the lineup and add some offensive pop as well. The Detroit Red Wings. Todd McClellan will be starting part of his 3rd season in the Motor City. And probably the biggest news takes place off the ice because there is no general manager and there is a team captain that right now has no intention of playing.
Yeah, who knows what's going on with Dylan Larkin and his agent, whether they are waiting to see who the GM will be. Boy, it is late in the summer, though, to be hiring a GM in the August 20s, somewhere in the 20s. Hopefully they don't go till September because there's still a lot of work to be done in Detroit as we're going to go through. Not a lot has been done this summer. And the biggest thing hanging out there is your captain coming back or are you trading him? He's asked to be traded. He's given a list of 4 or 5 teams. Stevie Yzerman wasn't very happy about it when he was GM earlier in the summer. And I can't imagine that anybody would be, but we'll see. That's still an ongoing soap opera. Does Dylan Larkin, the Michigan native, does he come back to his team?
And the pressure on this franchise that finished 6th last season in the Atlantic with 92 points, 16th overall, they now own the longest active playoff drought in the NHL of 10 years. They haven't won a playoff series since the opening round against Anaheim in 2013. Their metrics are from kind of mid-range to towards the bottom of the league in terms of offense, 22nd, defense tied for 19th. Power play was 12th, but penalty killing 23rd. The only trade acquisition during the course of the offseason, Keegan Colasar, forward, coming in from the Vegas Golden Knights for 2 draft picks. And you have to think, okay, Colasar is a bottom 6 forward. He's not giving you offense. Patrick Kane signed with the Chicago Blackhawks. And even though they did sign Victor Arvidsson from the Bruins, I see a lot of the same issues that have taken place. Yes, Alex DeBrincat has performed admirably, and there are others out there, but I just don't see it for this club. And you also have to remember that the last several marches for this team have been absolutely dreadful. So they have gotten themselves into position where they could make a run for the playoffs, and then they've just got no kick at the finish. And I don't see a lineup here that is going to add to that.
No, I think that they're basically treading water this summer. I think Detroit is going to go backwards, and that's not a good statement to make with a team that was 6th in the Atlantic and 10th in the East. I just don't see this team making the playoffs for the first time in 11 seasons. I just don't see it. I don't see where they've got the people. They don't have a GM. The captain we don't know whether he's going to play or not. And not only the captain, maybe their best player, you could say. I just think that they've got some real problems ahead.
I think they're hoping Marco Kasper could take his game to the next level and add on with DeBrincat. And like you said, who knows with Larkin, but let's now circle back to this GM situation. And they have gone out and they have hired a firm in the search of a new GM. We all know how big analytics have become in and around the National Hockey League, in all sports for that matter. But for an Original Six franchise, and for somebody that has been in the organization for as long as a Jim Devellano per se, does it surprise you that they are going outside to actually find a GM for this team?
It's shocking to me because the Ilitches have owned this team since 1982. Chris Ilitch is now in charge, who obviously was just a kid back in 1982. So it's not like he's been at the helm the whole time, but they have been steeped in hockey for so many years. They shouldn't need to go to a search firm to find somebody. And as you said, they got Jimmy D still with them, even though he's, not living around there all the time, but he could certainly help with this search. Steve Yzerman could help if in fact that relationship has not been severed between Stevie and Chris Ilitch. I find it very peculiar that they've got to have a search firm and that on August 20th, they don't have a general manager.
I don't think there's a lot more to say here. It's just, I don't see this drought ending. And this is not a real strong team on paper. As a matter of fact, I'd even dare say, and I know that we're really not in the prediction market here, that they could compete for a lottery pick towards the end.
Yeah, they've got some real high-end players. You've mentioned them. They've got 2 or 3 real good players that'll probably keep them from being down as a bottom feeder in the very bottom. But this is an angry fan base to begin with. I mean, I read and see things that are being said out of the Detroit Red Wings fan base. It's not good. They're not happy. They weren't happy with Stevie Yzerman, and he's their hero. So I don't know. Little Caesars Arena will not be a happy place, I don't think, this season. I hope I'm wrong.
And I think John Gibson did an admirable job in goal coming over from Anaheim a year ago, and Moritz Seider is one of the top defenders in the league. But there's just not enough collectively there when you look at this team in relation to other clubs, not only in the Atlantic, but throughout the NHL.
No, I totally agree with you. And I don't like what I'm saying about Detroit because, of course, I worked there for many years, and I would like to see them get back into the playoff mix, but I cannot envision that happening.
Perhaps if Chris Ilitch is listening to this, he will put a phone call into my partner here.
Perhaps, but I won't be counting on it.
The Florida Panthers. This may be the most intriguing team in the NHL during the course of the offseason. 2-time defending champions dropped to 7th in the Atlantic. Season just packed with injuries. And I think they ended up with 11 players on IR at the end of the season. And we're already hearing that Brad Marchand will miss the start of the season after undergoing surgery, but they will have their captain, Alex Barkov, back. But the moves that they made during the course of the offseason, and we're going to start there, Neil, because this could be the biggest terror squad that the NHL has seen since the Broad Street Bullies of the early to mid 70s, and then the big band Bruins before that. We already mentioned before regarding Ottawa that Brady Tkachuk has been sent to the Panthers June 21st, comes in for 4 draft picks. Radko Gudas, another captain, comes in from the Anaheim Ducks for A.J. Greer. Garnet Hathaway, tough guy from the Philadelphia Flyers, comes in for a 6th-round pick. And so when you look at the sandpaper that's already there, Matthew Tkachuk, Sam Bennett, this is a club that looks like it's going for bear. They're going to rough it up the entire season. They have the second oldest team in the NHL. So you could almost tell Bill Zito's sense of urgency here. And, of course, Paul Maurice now in his 5th season with the Panthers.
Yeah, and you can't not like what they did over the summer. I mean, they were very active, and, of course, they got the biggest fish in the offseason, which is Brady Tkachuk. But they are going to be a rough and tumble team to play against. The only the only thing I can say is that when you play that physical style that the Tkachuks play, Sam Bennett plays, and others, there are going to be injuries, because it's not just about getting hit. It's also about putting out a hit and throwing your body into somebody else. It takes a toll on you after a while. So we'll see, but certainly Florida looks like they're right back and ready to go again where they left off after their Stanley Cup of 2025.
The other area that we have to look at is the goaltending, with Sergei Bobrovsky signing as a UFA with the Toronto Maple Leafs. So they bring in Jacob Markstrom from the New Jersey Devils. He comes in along with Angus Crookshank forward, and the Panthers send away Evan Rodriguez, Ben Steeves, and Jesper Boqvist. And for a backup, Akira Schmid comes in from the Vegas Golden Knights for a 2028 third-round pick. So we are going to see a very different look, same style, but different look for this Panthers team in 26-27.
A lot of different names on the backs of the jerseys for sure, but same style of play and same head coach, same captain back in the lineup now. So they're going to be a fun team to watch, though. And if you're a Panthers fan, you got to be pretty excited about the season.
We're going to go pretty linear here because I want to talk about the additional drops of this team to what we've already mentioned. Mackie Saviskevich, bottom 6 forward, traded to Seattle on June 21st. Also leaving via free agency, forward Noah Gregor, defenseman Michael Benning, going to Winnipeg and Calgary respectively. Vinny Hinostroza going to Colorado. Daniel Tarasov, who was a backup to Bobrovsky last year, he goes to the Red Wings. William Skoog, signed by the Red Wings as well. Jack Studnicka, signed by the Flyers, as was Nolan Foote. Their additional adds, Sam Lafferty from Chicago, Lars Eller from Ottawa, Bakunji Imama from the Pittsburgh Penguins, John Beecher from Calgary, Alex Petrovic from Dallas, and re-signing with the Panthers, Cole Schwid and Donovan Sobrango. So there was so much traffic when I prepared the Panthers here. I actually had to make the font smaller to get it all on one page. It is an enormous amount of movement, but as we just said before, the mindset and the approach is not going to change.
No, and give Bill Zito credit. I mean, he was working his tail off this offseason to put this thing back together again. And, We'll see whether the move on the goaltending is good or not, getting Jacob Markstrom out of New Jersey, where he was a bit of a disappointment. Certainly losing Bobrovsky is a hole, but Bobrovsky's getting pretty old too. So, his game at some point has to start to fade. He's almost at 40 years of age now.
So with that, we will segue to the last team in the show. The Toronto Maple Leafs. Anything but boring, and few organizations have undergone a cleansing like this one, from managing to coaching to personnel. Their GM was penalized by the NHL when he was down in Arizona, and now John Chayka is the GM of the Maple Leafs, and his hiring as head coach was Jim Hiller, whose run in Los Angeles was somewhat inauspicious. He replaces Craig Berube. The team now has the Mitch Marner saga behind them. That is a year out. They made some intriguing acquisitions. You just mentioned Bobrovsky. We've mentioned Darren Radish and Nick Paul earlier in this show. They have Gavin McKenna, the first overall pick in this draft. And, of course, the team moved up from 5-1 in the lottery, so kind of stepped in it the same way the Islanders did the year before with Matthew Schaefer. So there's a lot of stuff here, and not all of it bad, certainly. As a matter of fact, I think there's a lot of positive here. But the big question for me, how is this all going to fit together?
And I certainly can't be the one that answers that, because I have been scratching my head from the very get-go here, from the time that they let Brendan Shanahan go, which was a year ago, and then they let Brad Treliving go, and then they inexplicably find John Chayka someplace, parts unknown, because he was right out of it after a very, as you said, auspicious time in Arizona, where Gary Bettman actually suspended him from the league. And then John Chayka and his partner in this, Matt Sundin, who is back from Sweden, who hasn't spent a minute in an NHL front office until now, they somehow find out that Jim Hiller is going to be their head coach. They come to that conclusion with the people that were available, that Jim Hiller, who had been fired mid-season in LA, was going to be their head coach in Toronto, replacing, as you said, Craig Berube. Their player personnel moves, not bad. I mean, really not. You can't. There's nothing in their player personnel moves that I would say, "Oh my God, what are they doing?" So Toronto will be interesting. Will they be better than last year? I'm going to say yes, they will be. Will they be definitely in the playoffs? They should be, with the players that they've got, with Matthews and Nylander. And if McKenna is even close to what Schaefer was for the Islanders last year, he'll be a huge thing. If Bobrovsky can play 75% as good as he had for the Panthers, he'll probably be real good for them. Darren Radish, if he can be 75% of what he was last year for Tampa, he'll be very good for them. And I really like Nick Paul's acquisition. So, yeah, they'll be better than they were last year, in my view. I'm not sold on Jim Hiller as a head coach in the NHL, and much less the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Well, what did it tell you that they went through this supposedly exhaustive search of like 24 candidates and they land on Hiller?
It tells me that they didn't really go through 24 candidates. That's what it tells me. I don't know how they got to Jim Hiller, and I have nothing against Jim Hiller other than his body of work isn't there to show you that he's good, the man for the job, just as Chayka's body of work isn't there. But just as Keith Pelly's body of work isn't there to be running MLSE, which is Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment and all their sports teams. So this is going to be an interesting year. I don't think that the drought of Stanley Cups, from the last one being in 1967, when George Armstrong was captain and Punch Imlach was the coach, I don't think that's going to end in the 2027 Stanley Cup. But are they a playoff team? Probably should be. Probably right around the top of the wild card is my prediction.
They only came in with 78 points last year, which was 28th overall, and they did suffer a 30-point drop after actually winning the Atlantic Division in 24-25. So, look, in addition to Matthews, who will become a UFA in 2 years, and you've got Tavares, and you've got Nylander, and you got Morgan Riley, who was rumored to be on the move. He's coming back. He's looking forward to it. There are some other areas that I think the team filled in nicely with the additions of Jack Roslovic signing for 2 years, $4 million per. The Edmonton Oilers, Colton Sissons coming in for the Vegas Golden Knights, Teddy Bluger from Vancouver, and Brandon Duhaime from the Washington Capitals. So there are some good spare parts here, and I think that if Hiller can pull this lineup together, get the productivity that is expected, I believe you're correct. I think that I could even see them in that 2-3 area if a lot of things go well for them.
Yeah, and Jim Hiller's going to have to be a very good coach. And he has not proven that in his other, in other times. So we'll have to see. Give him a chance. You got to give people a chance. You got to give John Chaika a chance. He's got the job. Now give him a chance. You got to give Jim Hiller the chance. But the guys that are on the ice that are wearing the skates are going to be doing it. Matthews has to get back to where he was previously. Nylander has to get a little bit more mature and get back to where he was. The Mitch Marner thing has to be forgotten about. John Tavares has to continue to try to be as good as he was, even though he's getting up there in age now and getting late in his career. Morgan Riley, I mean, can he be any better than he was last year? If he's not, it won't be good enough. And I suspect that's why they've got Darren Radish to be the number one guy back there. So there's a lot of question marks for this team. But I do think that they're going to be a better team than they were last year.
2 question marks that I want you to answer before we wrap this up. What does Jim Hiller have to do to distinguish himself from his past with the LA Kings? What does he have to do with this club?
Win. You just got to win. I mean, seriously, he's got to get his team winning, and then everything, he'll be great. I mean, Craig Berube, when they won the Atlantic Division, as you mentioned a couple of years ago, everybody thought Berube was a great hire. Berube's doing a great job. Well, guess what? The next year, of course, they turfed him. So Jim Hiller's just got to win. He's got to make this team win. He's got to put the pieces together of the puzzle in the right order and get this team to win. A lot will depend on Bobrovsky, and can he be that goaltender that he was in Florida? As you said, he's 37 years old now. But goaltenders are a different animal, and maybe he can play just as well at that age as he did a few years ago. But there's a ton of question marks.
And perhaps the heir apparent in goal for the Maple Leafs, Artur Akimov, who played 2 games for Toronto last season. The other question, and this is a different animal from Matthew Schaefer a year ago, coming in and playing defense for the Islanders and winning the Calder Trophy, unanimous vote. What are the expectations for McKenna? Because he's a very small guy. I mean, he is around the size of Connor Bedard in Chicago. So I read something from Steve Simmons in the last couple of weeks that when you look at the Bedards and the recent small, diminutive forwards that have come into the league, that includes Mitch Marner 10, 11 years ago, 60 points, 75 points. What's the expectation here for you?
He is the first overall to come into a situation when he is joining what should be a good team. And when I say a good team, I mean not there's 16 teams make the playoffs and 16 teams miss. Let's call the top 16 good teams, for lack of better words. He's joining a playoff team right away. He's joining a team that's got a 60 goal scorer on it. He's joining a team with William Nylander. He's joining a team that has their starting goaltender has 2 Stanley Cups under his belt. So his job's not going to be as hard as it was for Matthew Schaefer last year. It's not going to be as hard as it was for Bedard. It's not going to be as hard as it was for the San Jose Sharks' young phenom. And we all know who that
Celebrini, yes.
Yeah, of course, it's Macklin Celebrini. But those guys had hard goes. They came right in and they had to be the top guy right away. McKenna can ease in, and I think that's going to be a huge benefit for him.
That'll wrap up our show for today. Special thanks to UBS Financial Services, Inc. for being our presenting sponsor. NHL Wraparound and UBS Financial Services, Inc. are not affiliated. UBS is a sponsor of NHL Wraparound, and no other affiliation, relationship, or endorsement is made, suggested, intended, or should be implied or inferred between UBS and NHL Wraparound or any of the individuals or businesses and or their respective products and services appearing in this program.
Let's give a big shout out to all of you out there listening to this, all of you out there watching this. Reach us if you care to at Neil@NHLWraparound.com or Vic at NHLWraparound.com. Send us an email. Tell us what you like, what you don't like. But most importantly, subscribe. Whatever you're listening to us on, whatever platform, please subscribe. And we're on all platforms, so there's no excuse for missing our show. We're on Apple, we're on Amazon, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and the aforementioned YouTube. And don't forget to check us out on buzzer.com. That's BZZR.com. They have all sports on there. We're their lead dogs for their hockey coverage, so we are on there as well. We're also on Facebook with shorts, on TikTok, Instagram, and our complete catalog of shows that we have been doing since January of 2024 are on our website, which of course is called NHLWraparound.com.
We will wrap up our summer coolers next week. Central Division comes your way Monday, August 24th, followed by the Pacific Division on Wednesday, the 26th. And just a reminder that all 32 teams will be released as separate episodes on YouTube. That will come your way after Labor Day. So on behalf of Neil Smith, I'm Vic Morren. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for joining us on the NHL Wraparound podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay up to date on all the NHL action.